Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc and Kim. Every Wednesday, Marc and Kim, along with their special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc and Kim will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience, and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc and Kim are tested, certified, and professional spiritual mediums, metaphysical teachers, healers, and spiritual advisors with their own individual spiritual practices in Seattle, Washington, and Los Angeles, California. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
And good afternoon, inspired listeners. We are so happy to have you join us today. As you know, we are streamed in over 130 different countries. So wherever you may be in the world, welcome and thank you for being with us. I'm Kim Thalken, founder of Love First, where life transformations happen, and calling in from Encino, California. And joining me as my co-host every week is Mark Lanehart, the intuitive prospector, calling in from the beautiful and green state of Washington. Mark, how are you, partner?
I am doing great. How are you, Kim? I'm excited for today's show.
I am doing excellent. I am so excited. As you know, Mark, we have a fantastic show ahead of us and one that you and I have been eagerly awaiting now for many months. Mm-hmm. And for our listeners, we are so excited about having Panache Desai as our guest today, which we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks on our show. In fact, we've had questions pouring in from our listeners all over the country, just wanting to make sure they don't miss out on this opportunity to hear Panache's insight. So if you'd like to send through your questions to us or for our guests, you can always do that on Facebook under Inspired Living Radio and Twitter under Inspired for Us. So without further delay, Panache Desai is a transformational catalyst who guides people to access their authentic, essential nature. He was born and raised in London, England. He still has that beautiful accent. Panache spent his childhood surrounded by a spiritual family, spending a lot of his time in prayer and worship. But it was after a profound, transformative experience more than over a decade ago now, he has committed his life to empowering humanity in the deepest states of connection and awareness, and helping people to directly experience divine consciousness for themselves. And what a beautiful gift to be able to help someone achieve. His message of love and self-acceptance has drawn thousands of people from all over the world to his seminars and his workshops. And as we well know, he is a highly sought-after speaker who has appeared on Oprah Winfrey's Super Soul Sunday. He has also collaborated with some of the top spiritual teachers of our time, from the likes of Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, Iyanla Van Sant, Ariana Huffington, Ram Dass, Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, Greg Braden, Joe Dispenza, and Neil Donald Walsh. Last year, he published his first book, congratulations on that, called Discovering Your Soul Signature, a 33-day path to purpose, passion, and joy. Panache, welcome to our show, and thank you so much for being with us.
It's great to be here with you both. Thanks for having me.
Wow is all I have to say. I mean, what an amazing background that you have, aside from it being quite impressive, of course. I mean, it brings a tremendous amount of knowledge and wisdom, which we can't wait for you to share with us today. So I'd like to start a little bit by learning a little bit more about your earlier experiences, Panache. You came from a spiritual background, but there was a pivotal point for you over a decade ago or so that you mentioned that transformed your life. Can you share with us what that experience was and how it shaped you into who you are today and the work that you're doing?
I come from a cultural heritage that's steeped in like 5,000 years of spiritual exploration and then some. And being Indian really an incredible blessing, and is an incredible blessing, because that lineage really provided the platform for everything that's happening in my life now. In those 5,000 years, we've had people who have embodied divine consciousness and have been able to share that, and those beings are considered to be the highest form of expression on the planet. Then we've had beings who have been good at disseminating information, or sharing their own wisdom, or translating ancient wisdom into a modern context. And so when everything started happening to me in my life, I just found it all very strange, even though in some ways it was predestined for me to be where I am today. And I can say that because on the level of my identity or ego, I wanted no part of it. It wasn't how I envisioned myself, and yet it was my soul signature. And our soul signature is our core essence. It's who we authentically are. It's that which we've come to share. And I, like many of the people that are listening today, got to a place where I'd moved out of alignment with that. And I remember it, distinctly. I was in London. I had a conversation with my mother, and I said, I've got to move away. I want to go and live like a monk for 6 months. I feel like I'm living everyone else's version of my life, and I don't know why I'm here anymore. And I need to go away and get clear about what that is. And so I was very fortunate in the fact that I had a mother who was wholeheartedly expecting this conversation, and she said, go. So I end up going on retreat for 6 months and going through this profound remembrance of who I am. And it was during this time and in the time that followed that the platform for Soul Signature was born. Basically, all of this culminated in the direct experience that I had of the divine in 2002. And for me, I needed to have that experience because, being Indian, I was also very skeptical. Because again, we'd seen every variation of this that you could possibly imagine throughout time. And so I basically called out God and said, all right, well, if I'm here to be a messenger, then I need to experience directly who or what you are. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it. And that calling out and that raising my fist up in the air and waving it at the sky led to the experience I talk about in the book, which is just this experience of this expansive ocean of energy that just vibrates at pure potential. That's just love. And in that moment, the skepticism, the misidentification that I was engaged in began to fall away. And it's not that my personality disappeared. It's that I was just so fully present to my soul and so fully present to that connection that that's all there was. And I ended up staying in that state for about 4 to 6 months. It was a period of integration after that experience. And then as a result of what happened to me, people had heard what had happened. They'd come to see me. They'd sit down with me, and all of a sudden, miracles would start to happen in their lives. All of a sudden, they'd have money, or their health would improve, or where they didn't have a relationship, all of a sudden there'd be a relationship. And again, I couldn't explain any of it. It was all just happening through me. And my whole life has been like this. And my whole life has been this incredible adventure that has nothing to do with me. And that includes the Oprah appearance, that includes the book, it includes all of it. It's just that when we're living our destiny and we're living our soul signature, ultimately we are taken on this incredible adventure. And the blessing is that when we're at peace with ourselves and we're accepting of our humanity, we can fully enjoy every moment of it. Because it's only ever that inner conflict or that judgment or that conversation that we could or should be different than we are that creates the suffering in the first place. And so it's been quite the ride, Kim. I'm only 36 now, soon to be 37. I can't wait to see what's next.
My goodness. Well, gosh, where do I go from here? You covered so much in just that. But I will comment on that. I mean, there's nothing like going straight to the top, right? To God when you've got questions. And
that's a great point, Kim, because I think now we're living at a time of personal empowerment. And I think that now more than ever, we've reached a vibrational and energetic threshold to where we are now shattering all of those external forms, and we're cultivating that relationship with the inner divine. And for me, Soul Signature was the precursor to that. It's like, we had to get to a point where we could accept and embrace who we are on the level of our humanity so that we could allow that inherent divinity that was always present to just finally guide us and to express itself through us in a way that we're aware of. And so you're absolutely right. There's nothing better than going straight to the top. But the part that everyone's missing for the most part in the self-help and transformational paradigm is that top is inside of them. And it always has been.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Panache, what does it? You talked a little bit about. We're going to be going to break here shortly, but I want to just cover this thought. When you talked a little bit about not living in alignment with your true self, what does that feel like when one is not living in alignment with their true selves? How do people identify that?
It's really painful. It's
Mm-hmm.
really painful and exhausting because it takes so much effort and energy to not be who you are. It takes so much effort every day to try and show up as some version of you that people are going to accept and love. And some of the side effects of that are anger, resentment, anxiety, depression, fear, sadness. I mean, all of the things that, for all intents and purposes are really playing out in the world today. So, all of those are indicators. Again, if you're struggling anywhere in your finances and your health and your relationships, I mean, anywhere where there's any sort of breakdown in life, there's some place within you where you are not living in alignment with your essential self.
That's right. And when you talked about going away and spending time in meditation, and then the cultivation of all of that taking place following that, did you do that on your own, or did you go somewhere to understand how to do that? Connecting through to the divine and spending time in meditation and getting in alignment with your true self.
Well,
how did that? Yeah.
I went to a residential retreat center, but I actually discovered that I had to do it on my own. Mm-hmm. And I also realized that that's actually true for all of us, that even though we could be in a place that's conducive to that, ultimately it's only ever our own personal discovery that sets us free.
That's right. Everything starts with us, doesn't it? We're going to be taking a short break here, so stay with us, and we'll be right back with our lovely guest, Panache Desai.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Join Elliot Jolish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jolish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jolish Hour. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back to Inspired Living with Marc and Kim. Today's guest, we are so honored and humbled to have Panache Desai on. And before the break, Panache, you were talking about your transformation taking place and raising your fist to God and now being in this place to do such magnificent, spiritual work. I'm just curious, on the places that you went for your retreats, is there a certain area in the world that really stood out to you that helped with that transformation?
Well, actually, the funny thing is that I had the choice between going to India and coming to America, and I decided to come to America because they had nicer toilets.
That's a good enough. That's a good enough reason why.
If you're going to go and deal with your inner self, you may as well do it comfortably. And I can't say that it was like a 5-star resort, because it wasn't,
sure.
But it was way more comfortable than anything I was ever going to experience in India would be.
Oh, that's fantastic. As far as where our folks that are listening around the world here on OMTimes Radio, where can people locate you? What is the best way to find you out in this big world of ours?
You can find me online at PanacheDesai.com. That's PanacheDesai.com. And there's all kinds of stuff there that you can sign up for, and emails and meditations and all kinds of fun things. And also stay in touch via social media on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Perfect.
Great.
And we've gone ahead and put all those links on our Facebook and Twitter page as well, and also on the Inspired Living homepage. And real quick, Panache, we do want to just let our inspired listeners know, thank you for joining today's show, being a part of this spiritual community that raises our consciousness together as a community. And we do want to just send out real quick a inspirational shout out to one of our listening audience members, Jessica in Spokane, Washington. Thanks so much for listening. And if you're a new member as an inspired listener to Inspired Living, again, welcome. If we could give you a big digital hug, we would give that to you right now through the radio airwaves. And Kim,
thank you. Thank you for joining us, everybody. So, Panache, we had talked a little bit earlier about God. And we had a question come in from Pamela Tijerina in Belleville, Illinois, and she asked, do you think organized religion as it exists today unifies us and brings us closer to God as a whole?
I'm going to answer that question this way, Kim, that when I experienced the divine or God or whatever name you wish to use, ultimately I experienced it as an infinite ocean of energy. And in that moment, I realized that every single person on this planet believes exactly what they need to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the divine is infinite, then that means that everybody's right for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that they're right for you, but it means that they're right for them. And so ultimately, yes, everything is serving a purpose. Every belief, even if that's being an atheist and having no belief, all of it is serving a purpose, because all of that is a part of that soul's unique journey and that soul's unique expression.
That's right. When you talk about experiencing divine consciousness and helping people experience that for themselves, what an empowering thing to help somebody do. How do you go about doing that?
That happens on a vibrational level, an energetic level, you see. So that the soul exists on a very subtle level of energy. We all have one, but very few people will ever actually commune or connect with their soul. And every spiritual practice that's been laid out by mystics and saints and sages throughout the years was laid out to help an individual connect with that subtle realm. Now what's happening is that people are moving into that space and they're being able to stay in that space. And that's happening now more and more on my live calls, in person, at the events. That's happening everywhere, at the in-person immersions, all over the place. People are now moving into that place of connection and just remaining there. And that's exciting for me, because that means now we're on the verge of stadiums, and we're on the verge of mass media, and we're on the verge of really reaching millions and millions of people, as I always knew that we would. And so that happens in a way that is ultimately grace-filled, and that happens in the presence of someone who has experienced the divine themselves. It's like if you want to go to Australia, you need to go and see an Australian. There's no point going to Australia and asking an Austrian. They're not going to be a very good tour guide. And so my role really is just to ultimately just be an old friend who you've asked to remind you of this, and to lovingly once again help you establish you in that connection, and then, lovingly usher you off into the world so that you can be awesome and do epic things. And that's really it.
That sounds wonderful. Can you join us every week? I'd love to have that.
How about I just make this my permanent online home from now on?
Oh my goodness, that's even better.
I love it. we would call that spiritual awesomeness. That's what we refer to.
There you go. So Panache, you talked about something really important, reaching the masses, and how beautiful that is. More and more people raising their level of thinking, their consciousness raising. We had a question that came in from Marie Catherine from San Francisco, California. And she asked, how can we as co-creators create inner harmonious experiences filled with joy when the world is filled with a lot of pain and suffering still? Well,
it's actually even more important that you create those experiences inside of yourself. Because then the perception of pain and suffering falls away, not just in you, but in everything and everyone. And then the truth of this whole thing is revealed, which is it's just one giant play of light. And so what's happening now more and more, again, like we're in an age of personal empowerment, and people are beginning to fully embrace who they are, the way they are. And that basically looks like you reconciling who you are on the level of your humanity. Mm-hmm. And so as you maintain this place of connection with yourself, naturally you start to vibrate that out into your world. And then the old paradigm begins to crumble, and the old paradigm is fear, lack, and scarcity. And then before you know it, those perceived challenges and issues and pains that are just basically facilitating the maturation of humanity begin to dissolve, and you begin to see them for what they are. But it's only ever a question of awareness, and it's only ever a question of really loving yourself and really being at peace with yourself. And, I think the common misconception is that enlightenment means the end of pain. It doesn't. You just experience your pain peacefully. That's all it means. Well, and also it doesn't get to the point where it's pain. You're just fully available for the heartbreak. You're fully available for the fear. You're fully available for the anger. You're fully available for all of that. You experience it. It begins and ends inside of you, and that's the end of it. And so, that's a great question. I think in light of everything that's happening in the world, the majority of which is completely manipulated, by the way, for financial reasons, ultimately the more you remain in that place of peace and centeredness, the better. The more you're doing everybody a service.
Sure. And I think that just raises the point where everything starts with us, the individual. It all begins with us, not outside of us, but within us. Is that a way that you might describe it too?
That's exactly right, Kim. And actually now, the funny thing is I just read in the mainstream news that scientists are beginning to buy into this conversation that maybe our entire reality is actually a simulation. Mm-hmm. It's just getting wilder and wilder and wilder, which actually means that maybe they're about to acknowledge that it's an absolute illusion and it's one giant play of light, and that what's causing reality to appear in the way that it is everything that's unresolved in us. And the more we could actually resolve what was unresolved in us by simply witnessing it and observing it and feeling what's there, the more we could get to a place of clarity internally, to where then we could see and perceive and feel and experience the clarity and the divinity that's always been there.
And what is, I know that prayer and meditation have been a big part of your life. Is that an important part of going within and coming into this clarity that you're talking about, and connecting to the divinity within us? Or how would you suggest one does this?
It can be, but what I've discovered now is that just resting in the awareness of your breath is the most powerful way to maintain your connection. And literally what that looks like is just observing your inhalation and exhalation. That's it. It's not changing your breathing. It's not breathing to account. It's just literally observing the fact that you are breathing. That is the only thing required anymore. That turns your life into a living meditation, or as the ancient yogis and mystics would say, samadhi, union. Ultimately, it's this wakeful state of presence. And so I've actually now gotten it down to its simplest, most powerful form, which is just simply observing the breath in each moment. And that in and of itself is shifting people's lives in ways that, I can't even begin to describe. It's just been phenomenal to see how now, through people resting in the awareness of their breath, they're able to remain calm and peaceful. And by the way, when you're experiencing peace, that's when you're experiencing your enlightenment.
And, well, very interesting. So it's not this big, complicated formula. It comes down to just being aware of your breath.
The more you evolve and the higher you move in your vibration, the simpler and easier it becomes. Mm-hmm. And you realize that if it isn't simple, it's actually taking you away from soulfulness.
I love that.
Well, we've got another question that's come through here as we talk about higher consciousness and raising vibration. A question's come in from Mark Langford in Los Angeles, California, and he asks, how do you stay in higher consciousness when the people and the world around you usually are vibrating at a lower level? He says he struggles with this quite a bit.
Stop having a codependent relationship with your reality. So basically maintain your focus on your own connection and don't worry about what everybody else is doing.
There you go. I love that. That's right. A lot of times we're worried about what other people are doing. We're engaged in that when really all we need to do is focus on us, the individual.
And also, just to kind of expand on this a little bit, just out of the absolute love of the individual who asked the question, that if that's what you're noticing, if that's what your point of comparison is, then maybe you're not in the high vibration that you think you're in.
Wow. I feel like I'm in a class today. This is excellent. We're going to be heading into break. Stay with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network. What if business could be fun? What if business is the adventure of living? What are you choosing? Where do you do business that makes it easier, more fun, or more joyful for you? We'd love to see where you do business. Connect with us on Instagram at Joy of Business or Twitter at Joy of Business. And share your pictures with hashtags BusinessDoneWhere and Joy of Business. Let's change the world with business.
The truth is, you can't change the world if you're broke. I know, I've tried. Isn't it time you turned your life's calling into a profitable, freedom-based business? I'm Michelle Barr. Join me every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern for Sacred Success.
The cutting edge of conscious radio. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back to Inspired Living with Marc and Kim and our special guest today, Panache Desai. And Only found here on OMTimes Radio, the voice of consciousness. And what a beautiful discussion. I'm just sitting back listening to you guys talk, and just I'm trying to take notes. I'm like Kim, you said we're like students taking in all these notes. But Panache, one thing that really stands out, and one thing for my spiritual journey is, and I tell people, is I always take the time to disconnect so I can make the time to reconnect. And it sounds very similar to the same approach of what you did on those 6 months of your spiritual journey to come up with such a beautiful concept of your soul signature. And was it at that time that the soul signature concept really came to light and you really started teaching about it and writing about it?
It was at that point. Actually, at that point, I was still in resistance of it because I still thought the whole thing was very strange. And it was only after that experience that I had directly of the divine that it basically became something. And it's not that I did anything with it, but it's that people turned me into something. Because at that point in my life, there was no fixed identity, there was no self-image, there was really nothing there other than pure presence. And little by little, I guess some form of an identity or a form was created around it. I'm happy to say that it wasn't anything that was so restrictive that, it limited my ability to express who I am. But ultimately it was there in a way that people could begin to access it and understand it and relate to it and understand that it played a pivotal part in their greater unfolding into who they are. And so a soul signature came really as a result of people asking me questions. How do I access this state? What happened to you? How do I live in connection? What is enlightenment? How do I embody this authentic place of vibrational connection? What does it feel like? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? So it was born of everyone else's inquiry into what had happened to me. And very quickly I began to realize that, again, the biggest obstacle, I guess, to fully accessing all of that is simply just the acceptance of our humanity. Ultimately, I see a day where spirituality and transformation and self-help completely becomes obsolete. And that point will come when we fully understand that who we are as human beings are who we've been created to be. And that actually we could be no other way. And that engaging in the conversation of fixing, healing, and changing actually moves us away from our essential nature. So instead of relaxing into our humanity and accessing the divinity that's under there or in the midst of it, we begin to go on this journey to become some better version of ourselves so that maybe one day we can access our divinity, all the while missing the point that the divine doesn't have a problem with us. Ultimately, it just fully loves us for who we are, regardless of how we've lived our lives and what we think we should or shouldn't have done. And so soul signature really is the doorway to people, once again, living a life of connection authentically, staying in that place and experiencing unity consciousness or oneness all the time in every waking moment of life and living.
So there's a lot of truth to that saying the only way out is in. True?
Yeah, that's the only, in all honesty, that's the only way to really authentically embody connection, to really authentically embody divinity. You can't get there any other way. And that's why so many people have come to the realization that there is no path. It's not about the teaching. It's not about anything external. All of those things can serve as a prompt and a reminder. But ultimately, it's once you've experienced who you are, actually more than likely you'll have no words to describe it. And secondly, if you do, then those words will be so infused with presence that they will become a doorway for other people to experience their own divinity.
Why do you think that so many people are resistant to going within?
Because I think what they initially encounter is everything that they've repressed or suppressed. And so when they actually first begin to move into a place of this exploration, everything that they encounter is everything that they think shouldn't still be there, or everything that they've judged about themselves. And ultimately, actually, it's funny, I'm in the middle of writing a new book now, and it's a memoir about my experience with my daughter, with Celeste. We almost lost her in the first week of her life. She was born with a congenital heart defect. And there's a quote from Carl Jung that says, the only authentic way to enlightenment is through your pain. People will imagine figures of light, and they'll go off to far off places to avoid feeling it. but actually the only way to get to your soul is through your pain.
Mm-hmm. And how is your daughter today?
She just came home actually from her second major stint in the hospital, and I'm happy to say that she's home and doing well, and we're happy to have her home.
Yay.
Well, wonderful. We're all sending her a lot of love.
Mm-hmm. And I was just going to say, I find that very consistent with those of us that are working for Spirit as light workers, that we go through this pain that you're talking about, Panache, and then we're able to share that and empathize and connect in a deeper, more meaningful way. And I just find that to be consistent with a lot of people that are doing the work that we're doing and bringing that spiritual consciousness. You talked earlier in the show about science finally catching up with a little bit of what we already know to be true, right, with meditation and finding that inner divinity within us, and to help us, in this life, if it really is, a hologram or an illusion, as they say, and even just how thought is impacting matter and the scientific studies going around that. And I just always find that there's a consistency of those of us that are doing the work have gone through a lot of the pain, walked in those shoes, and be able to, help others because we have done that.
And I think that's the only way that you can authentically actually love another person.
Mm-hmm.
It's only when you know the depths of your own rage and fear and insecurity and guilt and shame and everything else that you've been conditioned to believe you shouldn't have, or society has taught you to deny,
mm-hmm.
that you can really authentically love another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Do you ever go back to that day when you raised your fist to God? I say that because I did the exact same thing, and here I am, 10 years later talking to you on OMTimes radio live. I mean, do you ever think about what would have happened if you wouldn't have done that?
There are days where I wish I hadn't have done
that. Okay, we're in alignment there. Sometimes I say the same thing.
There are days where I wish I'd just left it all a mystery.
Mm-hmm.
Then I could have continued to deny my destiny.
But now you're changing lives and inspiring others. I love it.
And I don't have a choice about it either. So
you're in it. You're in it. It's too late. There's no turning back, right? So you wrote your first book last year, and it's a 33-day path to purpose, passion, and joy, which just sounds lovely. Talk to us a little bit about what that entails.
Kim, it's interesting because actually there's a little story around it. I never actually wanted to write a book. And the joke is, and you'll begin to discover this about me, it's like I've really have resisted this role of messenger. And the joke is that I was invited to all these author conferences, like 3,000 to 5,000 people. And I was the only person there who was a speaker that didn't have a book. And I'd go to the author dinners, and every author dinner I was at, I'd bump into one of my peers and colleagues, and they would say, you know what, Panache, you really have to write a book. And I would ignore them. And one night, at one of these conferences, I got to sit down with Neale Donald Walsch. And for those of you that don't know who Neale is, Neale spoke to God. And Neale and I are sitting down. And there are moments where Neale is Neale, and he's cute, and he's from Wisconsin. And there are moments where there's something else speaking through him. And he looks at me, and he goes through one of these shifts right in front of my eyes. And I could tell because the energy shifted. And he just said to me, you know what, pal? He said, you have to write your book. He said, your book is going to touch lots of people's lives. He said, Conversations with God, every copy touched 5 different pairs of hands. And he said, think of the book as a vibrational tool. And at that point, I was like, okay, I can wrap my head around that. Because in my mind, the last thing the world needed was another self-help book, right? And so here we are. Then all of a sudden, Super Soul Sunday happens. And of course, the joke is I'm on Super Soul Sunday, no book. And Oprah's like, no book. And I'm like, no book. She's like,
I remember when she said that.
She's like, Panache Desai, write the book. Trust me, write the book. And I'm like, okay. So not only did Neale Donald Walsch, the guy who just spoke to God, tell me that maybe I should write a book, but now Oprah Winfrey's telling me maybe I should write a book. And so that's kind of how it happened. And the blessing is that I had, all of the material for Soul Signature. I'd already been curating it and collecting it. So thankfully it was more of an editing process than anything else. And, it's just a wonderful work, and it just really comprehensively steps you out of fear, into love. It's the ultimate spiritual journey. It's the ultimate, resource. It's the ultimate guide. And, every day we're met in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening, and for 3 minutes. And basically we begin to dive into all of these different aspects of our humanity. And through embracing them, we begin to uncover more and more of our dynamic potential. And we unleash, by the end of the book, we're ready to unleash our soul signature into this world. And
when Oprah tells you to write a book, you write a book, right?
Well, you know, I mean, it's like, God, how many messengers did I need, right? It was just hysterical. And you know, and when I'm saying my peers and colleagues, I mean, like, you know, Greg Braden would tell me, like, write a book. You know, Joe Dispenza would say to me, write a book. Like everyone who I met at these author conferences, everyone was saying to me, write a book. And then when Neil said it, it finally shifted for me, because at that point, it wasn't a book. It was about an energy. It was about sharing an extension of this presence in the world in the written word. And then when Oprah said it, I was like, okay, like I guess I'm supposed to write a book now. And
do you feel that the timing was essential too, like the perfect divine timing of writing this book?
Yes, because the whole wave of the expression at that point of Super Soul Sunday was reaching a crescendo. And it reached that crescendo, and then the end of that crescendo, or the end of that incarnation, was soul signature. And actually, the funny thing is now that whole thing has kind of ebbed and flowed, and now there's something else that's being born that's way beyond soul signature. And that takes everything even deeper and supports people in an even more powerful way. And actually will allow this conversation to be embraced by everybody. So so it was exactly the right time. And now we're at a point now where it's time for something else, and for an evolved expression beyond soul signature at that point, you know, in our evolutionary arc.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think timing is always very important, and we don't rush it, and we don't go against the grain, as they say, and try to swim against the river, and everything just falls into an alignment. And Kim, did you have another question before we go to break, or?
Yeah. Is there a significance behind the number 33?
33 is, yes, and I'll tell you right after the break.
Excellent. Stay with us. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
Live with medium Lisa Phoenix, Mediumship Messages and Musings, explores mediumship and all things metaphysical. Lisa Phoenix invites you to reach above and beyond your everyday experiences, to explore new dimensions in the spirit world. She will do live readings to connect callers to their loved ones in spirit, shares engaging stories and teachings from her own personal experience, and will have intriguing conversations with other mediums, spiritual teachers, and healers to help you understand the metaphysical world so you can connect to these forces in your day-to-day life. Join your host on this magical and metaphysical journey into the world of spirit every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
Host your show on IOM-FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM-FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
If you remember living fearlessly, joyfully, and in a world filled with adventure, happiness, pleasure, and unbridled living, then this show is for you. Join me, Dame Nicole Brandon, as I bring you the world's top experts in wealth, creativity, flow, seat-edging technology, space, wellness, health, love, lust, and passion, all merging together each week here at the Hub of Happiness. Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific Time and 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Passionate Living, where you can ride on the magic carpet ride of living and learn how to lead a passionately wild, exciting, and outrageously amazing life.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
And welcome back to Inspired Living with Marc and Kim and our fabulous guest today, Panache Desai. Panache, before the break, we were talking about the significance of the number 33 with your book, Discovering Your Soul Signature.
3's always been a very powerful number for me. And so in every wisdom tradition, there's a trinity. And I personally felt drawn to that number, and 33 was always a very powerful number, 333. And so I just thought, well, why not 33? And also it serves as a great progression out of fear into love. And we also meet 3 times a day. So there's a lot of power in the way that it's laid out, in the way that you move through the book every day. And ultimately the whole thing is laid out so you get to a place of self-acceptance, love, and mastery at the end of it.
Yes, and I did read on your site there's a lot of support for the people who would like to participate in this 33-day path, which is great. It's not like people are out there on their own trying to figure it out. They've got a lot of support that they can find on your website, panachedesai.com. I also want to make sure that we mention some of your upcoming events that you have coming along in the next couple of months. So you can find Panache at the Global Gathering in Orlando, Florida, from November 13th through the 15th, as well as the Naples Immersion event in Naples, Florida, September 27th through October 2nd. So make sure to check that out on Panache's website as well if you're interested in seeing him at these upcoming events. We did have another question come in, and this one is from Suzette Phillips in Denver, Colorado, and she asks, I'm interested in so many different things that it's hard to narrow it down sometimes, and it feels complicated. I think more than anything, I'd love to learn how to find out what my purpose here is, and I really want to help people make a difference, but what exactly does that look like, and what am I supposed to do? She's contemplating helping people domestically or globally, or should she do both? So she's having a hard time kind of narrowing that down and understanding what her purpose is. Can you help her with that?
Well, your purpose is to be yourself. And your job basically is excuse to which the divine gets to love its creation. So when you're being yourself and you're engaged in the world, you're naturally unfolding the highest in everybody that you meet. And that doesn't have to be a grandiose expression. It can be something as simple as, having a catering service that, takes care of people and provides them, organic, nutritious food that they don't get right now because they're so busy working. It can be something as simple as taking care of their pets, starting a pet sitting service. And I think actually now, the more mainstream it is, the better. I think that it's important that we begin to assume that it doesn't have to be spiritual, that we don't have to wear the badge of spirituality necessarily, but that just through being who we are and engaging in the world from a place of connection, naturally everything evolves into its highest expression.
Panache, it is so funny that you said a pet sitting business, because that is one thing she wrote through on considering as well. Perhaps this is an important message for her.
Yeah, again, I had no way of knowing that. That's fascinating.
No, you didn't. It's interesting how things happen and unfold, right? The messages we get unexpectedly at different times from different people. So, Marc, I know you have a question that you'd like to ask.
Yeah, so from one of our inspired listeners here, actually in Seattle, Washington, Raul would like to know, Panache, how do you deal with the speed of the times and staying grounded? And I have to agree, it feels like time is speeding up. Science is actually looking if time is speeding up. But I've also heard that maybe our consciousness is actually becoming more aware of time. So how do you deal with the time moving so quick and stay grounded is this question.
I guess the answer is that if you're unconscious, you don't have any choice. But the more aware and conscious you become, the more you have a choice to participate in things to the degree to which you wish to participate in them. But I've learned that actually the more you love yourself, the more you learn to say no. And I think that actually the more you're living your soul signature, the more you get to a place where you no longer need any external validation or approval. And so then you start living for what fills your heart with joy and what fills you the most with love, instead of doing something that you don't want to do because maybe it will gain you the approval of another person. Mm-hmm. And so, again, I think we have a choice. We don't have to go out and buy every gadget and participate in technology and continue to stay on the hamster wheel. Mm-hmm. We can actually choose to participate in it in whatever way we wish. And I think that it's up to every individual in today's modern world to set their own parameters around what that looks like. Like you don't have to answer every email that comes in. You don't have to answer emails after 5 p.m. You don't have to, pick up the phone on the weekends. You don't have to update your Facebook status. The world isn't going to end if you don't tweet. It's okay. I think that to a certain degree, once we've kind of overcome our own sense of self-importance and the belief that in the event that we don't participate in life, it's going to fall to pieces, that question takes care of itself, because you begin to see that even in the absence of your participation, everything is unfolding in absolute perfection.
Right.
So then how much effort on your part is actually required, if any at all?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I was, looking at your website, and I just kind of want to read this right from your website, Panache, because I think it really sums up what today's show is all about in your soul signature. And it just simply states, surround yourself with like-minded community, engulfed in the energy of love, step out of your fear, break free from your past, shatter your limitations, experience the deepest connections, and realize your true potential. I love that.
Yeah, thank you. That really does sum it up very clearly.
As Mark mentioned, living your true potential, how do people tap into their infinite potential?
By embracing the part of them that they believe is finite. By lovingly observing and witnessing without judgment their perceived limitations. By understanding that they're not broken, they don't need healing, they don't need fixing. Actually, all they need to do is actually start to cultivate this non-judgmental awareness about themselves. Because in that space, everything starts to come into alignment by itself. Our bodies are completely designed to regenerate. The only problem is that we're so stressed out and we're so overwhelmed that we won't allow our bodies to perform their natural function. Ultimately, what I've discovered, Kim, is that the more we chill out, the more life expands in the most incredible ways. Mm-hmm. And that the more we can relax and the more we can lovingly embrace what we consider to be our perceived flaws, the more we can see actually that they're perfect because they serve the expression that we're here to be in the world.
And we have a lot of distractions out there too. There's just the latest app and everything that you're talking about. There's just a lot of distractions, and really what you're saying actually ties into every month we try to have a positive affirmation for our inspired listeners out there. And this month's inspired affirmation is really, I am powerful, loving, and a creative being. And today's message just syncs up very well with everything that you're talking about, you're teaching, and we just really appreciate you being on the show today. Wow.
Oh, thank you.
Well, in Panache, you touch on a really important thing, because so many people are stressed out today, with work and the demands and pressures that the challenges that sometimes life presents. What kind of practical tools are there that people can use when they're moving through challenging times?
Well, I think it's important to understand the physiology of stress. So the first thing is basically that when we're in stress, actually we're contracted. And ultimately, we're unable to think clearly, and naturally impedes our ability to remain in synchronicity, possibility, and flow. And so in those moments where you become aware of the fact that you're stressed out, all you need to do is completely relax the body, breathe, and just let whatever's going on go on, and just stay connected to the breath. Your breath is pivotal in accessing the paradigm. And so the more you continue to abide and rest in the awareness of your breath, the less you will accumulate and be impacted by stress. The more you'll remain in a state of flow, the more you'll access a greater level of possibility and synchronicity, and the more the light and luminosity that lives within you will be able to shine through you into this world.
I love it. I wish we had another hour just to continue talking, talking about time and how fast it goes. We're at the end of the show. We only have a few minutes. And I just want to take this time, Panache, to thank you very much for being on Inspired Living with Marc and Kim. And we'd love to have you back if you're ever open to wanting to come back and be connected with our inspired listeners out there around the world. Kim, did you have anything that is up and coming for you?
I just want to give a big thank you to Panache myself. This has just been a wonderful last hour. I'm speechless. So I just want to say a big thank you. I'm Kim Thalken. You can find me at lovefirst.info, and I want to remind you to always come from a place of love.
And Panache, one more time, where can our inspired listeners locate you and sign up for one of your fabulous teachings?
PANACHEDESAI.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. We'll be back next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. Until then, be kind, be caring, be compassionate, and maybe smile a little bit too. Take care, everybody. See you next week.